At the Cafe Butalci. For several weeks, Penelope Dreadful's voluptuously angular form had graced the most prominent table at Ljubljana's Cafe Butalci. She arrived early each morning to resume her wait for Jason's swagger stick, the love of her life, or at least of a raucous New Year's Eve party a few weeks earlier. It had been a rather brief encounter, mostly in the dark, so much so that Penelope questioned her ability to recognize Jason if she saw him. The memory does play tricks, after all. Despite these minor misgivings, the heroine of our story fortified her patience by meditating upon Penelope's first axiom. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread, but they do get the best tables. Penelope's face radiated an insouciant come-hither look, suggesting that, notwithstanding her minimal attire, she had all the angles covered, though even the most casual observer would concur that the struggle had yet to declare a victor. By contrast, Penelope's fellow patrons at the Cafe Butalci were a singularly crapulous lot, sorely testing her patience with their crude attempts to inveigle their way into her good graces. Holding sway amid this rude uproar was Parma John, the cafe's redoubtable publican, determined to encourage one of his patrons to break through Penelope's resistance and win her hand in marriage, or something roughly to that effect. As each new wave of supplicants rippled in from the countryside, he loudly declaimed, "So, maybe want a diesel suitor." Or at least that's how it sounded. Yet none of the diesel suitors did suit her, least of all Marcus, a pastoral lad who fervently longed to take up residence amid the rolling hills and fertile valleys of the Penelopean landscape. Unfortunately, his technique was so lacking in sophistication, largely consisting of pickup lines like, "Hey, Big Mama, how's about it?" that even Parma John was prompted to say, "With lines like that, you couldn't turn on a telly, Marcus, much less a lady of such exemplary pulchritude." And thus he soon became known far and wide as Telly Marcus, much to the amusement of the other diesel suitors. Observing this scene from his favorite corner table was the eternally bemused Nikolai Misthaufen, practicing pundit and professor emeritus of proctophantasmism. "Refulgent banality and mindless frippery," he muttered. "A cavalcade of clowns, platitudes made flesh, and waddling cardboard cutouts." Of course, this enlightened thought leader of the Butalcian nitwitterati was, like all the others, panting to take the lovely Penelope's hand in marriage, though he would have settled for a quick knee trembler in the loo if the truth be known. To ward off all the unwanted advances of the diesel suitors, Penelope promised to choose one of them as her lover, but only after she had finished knitting her brows. While this patently transparent ruse seriously strained her facial muscles, it evidently did not strain the credulity of the diesel suitors. Then again, this was the Cafe Butalci, where a keen grasp of the obvious was always in short supply. So Penelope arrived at her table each day, brows unknitted, to begin anew, waiting. Meanwhile, the recently arrived Jason Swaggerstick sauntered onto the Dragon Bridge in the hopes of finding some clue as to the whereabouts of his beloved Penelope. He sported a vintage sharkskin suit, black, shirt, also black, turquoise tie and matching pocket square, black shoes shined to a parade gloss, and black socks, also shining. No hat. He was too hip for hats. Leaning against the railing, not far from one of the dragons, Jason bit the pointed end off a Cuban cigar and spat it into the river. The end, that is, not the cigar. He had learned that lesson the hard way. Then, with great ceremony and flourish, he fired up the cigar and gazed serenely as a grand plume of smoke rose slowly into the still air. Flipping the spent match into the river, he settled in to watch the great ebb and flow of humanity wash across the bridge. Soon, the voice of the nearby dragon interrupted his reverie. "Good day, sir. Are you searching for a virgin by any chance?" Jason casually swiveled his upper body to the right and blew a smoke ring into the dragon's gaping maw. "No," he said. "Then you are in the right place," the dragon continued. "There are no virgins on this bridge, or as we call it, the kingdom of Dragonia. And there never have been. The mere act of entering the kingdom, well, you get the idea. This explains why no one has ever seen us dragons wagging our tails. Of course, I am speaking in metaphors." "I am searching for my beloved Penelope," Jason said, rolling his eyes skyward. "Any idea where she is?" "Ah, the delightful Penelope," the dragon swooned. "Her parts have made quite a name for her in these parts. Indeed, the whole city is agog with tales about the virtuous Penelope. She is waiting for you, and I can tell you where. But first you must answer my little riddle." "My name is Jason, not Oedipus." "Humor me, O great wanderer, this should be fun." Pausing for dramatic effect, the dragon intoned, "Why was Jesus not born in Ljubljana?" Struggling to maintain a straight face, Jason shot back, "Because they could not find 3 wise men and a virgin." "Oh no!" cried the dragon, pounding his tail on the railing. "How did you know?" "Every 5th grader has heard that joke," Jason exploded with derisive laughter, "just with a different city." "And for that," the dragon squealed, "you must die." Anticipating just such an act of treachery, Jason had already unsheathed his magic sword, and now he lunged towards the dragon, causing them both to plunge into the river. Down there in the murky deep, Jason beheaded the dragon and then skewered both Grendel and Grendel's mother. With the day's work well and truly done, he surged to the river's surface, where he noticed that the cold water had shrunk his magic sword. He wiped it clean as best he could, lay on his back, and floated downstream, trusting in the gods to lead him to his beloved Penelope. Back at the Cafe Butalci, the diesel suitors were, as usual, hopping around Penelope's table like homing rabbits aching to spawn. Amidst this furry fervor, Penelope kept her brows knitted and her eyes peeled, in the hopes of spying Jason on the horizon. She did not have long to wait. As the fates would have it, Jason washed ashore a short distance upstream from the Cafe Butalci. Scrambling onto dry land, he ruefully observed that the cold water had shrunk his clothes as well as his magic sword. He tried to stretch his trouser legs and jacket sleeves to the proper length, but to no avail. Reconciled for the moment to his clownish appearance, Jason sloshed down the road in search of a friendly pub. At that same moment, Nikolai Misthaufen, having just run afoul of Parmesan for the 3rd time that week, evidently something about an unpaid bar tab, stormed out of the Cafe Butalci in a fit of anal explosive pique. Walking backwards, Misthaufen shook his fist and raged about the supreme injustice of it all. "In high dudgeon I was born," he shouted, "and there I shall die." Being thus distracted, he failed to notice Jason approaching from behind. Just as they were about to collide, Misthaufen abruptly turned to find himself face to face with Jason, he of the squishing shoes. Howling with laughter, Misthaufen placed his arm around Jason's shoulder and said, "Come with me, young man. I know just the place for you." Though somewhat mystified, Jason decided to play along. A frisson of excitement disturbed Penelope's concentration when she first spied Misthaufen and Jason approaching the cafe. Could this be Jason, she wondered? With the shrunken clothes and squishing shoes, he did not cut nearly so dashing a figure as she had remembered from their New Year's Eve encounter. Then again, her recollection of that night was somewhat low on specifics, especially since she and Jason had spent much of it in a darkened closet. "Dearest Penelope, I have found you at last," cried Jason, at once recognizing the familiar Penelopean landscape. "May I join you in a cup of coffee?" Unknitting her brows, Penelope gave Jason a big wink and patted the chair beside her. "I don't think we'll both fit in there," she said, recognizing Jason's voice. "But it would sure be fun to try, you old-fashioned boy." Upon hearing this, the diesel suitors erupted in loud protest, demanding proof of Jason's identity. Without speaking a word, Jason unsheathed his magic sword, which had returned to its normal size, and held it upright, while Penelope slipped bagel after bagel onto it. She stopped at a baker's dozen, even though there was room to spare. "Can any of you do that?" Jason asked. The diesel suitors found themselves speechless, all except Telemarcus. "No, I can't do that," Marcus replied, "as I have no magic sword, and neither do the rest of us, but surely I must be better than nothing." "Indeed you are," Penelope said kindly. "In fact, in my short time here, I have heard many of Ljubljana's fair maidens comment upon your manifest superiority to nothing." Telemarcus appeared satisfied with that response and melded back into the crowd. At this point, Misthaufen intervened. "Now that that's all settled, arise, Jason, arise, Penelope. Everyone grab a tumbler of red wine. There is no time to waste." Misthaufen raised his tumbler and continued, "I hereby declare Jason and Penelope to be the king and queen of this year's Carnival of the Simpletons. Now let's begin our journey with the traditional Butalcian salute." At Misthaufen's signal, everyone poured a few drops of wine from their tumblers onto the tavern floor and emptied the remainder onto their heads. Hair dripping with wine, they all rushed out of the tavern and skipped arm in arm down the road to Butale. Along the way, Misthaufen passed out handbills to the gaping passers-by. "Simply simpletons," it said. "Is your village missing its idiot? We may be able to help. Contact Nikolai Misthaufen, Idiot at Large in the Global Village, care of Cafe Butalci, Ljubljana."